David Shearer.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Mr Chair, I wanted to speak obviously in favour of this bill, because I think in terms of what's gone on in the past, before this legislation was enacted, as has been rehearsed in this House many, many times, there was about 100 odd people who died, or children mainly, who died in 10 years before this legislation passed, and since the legislation has been in operation, only about 30 have died. Now, that's 30 too many. And what we're concerned about in the Labor Party is that while we recognise and acknowledge that there is some compliance costs around this, and we need to make it as realistic and as pragmatic as possible, at the same time, we want to make sure that we are not slipping or reducing in any way the safety standards, which has gone to save about 70-odd lives. And what we're wanting to try and do, sir, is to make sure that not only that 70 lives are being saved, but the remaining 30 that have been lost in the last 10 years. Now, for a lot of people who have owned pools and spa pools, etc., this is a major cost to them. It's a hassle. It's an encumbrance that they don't really need. But quite frankly, it's one of those issues that, while you may look after your children absolutely every second of the day, anybody that has children knows that you get distracted, you maybe have more than one child, and a child will disappear, and the next thing, it only takes a few minutes before that child finds their way into a swimming pool and tragically loses their lives. So it's for that reason, sir, that the Labor Party supports this legislation, but only on the condition that we support the SOP that Jacinda Ardern has put up, the SOP 208. And that's very simple, Mr Chair. That very simple amendment simply says that rather than an alarm that might occur if a child opens a gate that gives them access to a swimming pool, that the gate itself is self-closing, and that the gate has a lock on it that a child can't open. Now, you have to ask yourself, what is so difficult about putting in an amendment like that in the form of Jacinda Ardern's SOP that will make the safety of swimming pools that much better because they are more secure? You may not hear the alarm that is being advertised. The alarm, to put in an alarm, might be more expensive. You can think of 1,000 reasons why an alarm is a pretty silly idea in terms of keeping a child under 4, a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old safe. I can think of a lot of good reasons and a lot of cheap reasons why having a door that is spring-loaded and locks automatically so that the child can reach up and open it, like we see in every kindergarten across the country, every play centre, preschool education centre across the country, where that sort of locking arrangement means that teachers and everybody else, the parents, know that children can't wander out onto a busy road.
I'm sorry to interrupt the member, but and I should have actually raised this a little earlier. This is about Jacinda Ardern's amendment, which is in part 2, and we're discussing part
1. Sorry. Well, sir, I mean, I come back to the point where I started with, is that the Labor Party supports this legislation. We think that there's some pragmatic changes that can be made that make the compliance for everyday households that much easier. It means that, for example, that the territorial authorities will be inspecting these pools on a 3-yearly rather than a 5-yearly basis. All of that makes good, solid sense. But I come back to the point, Mr Chair, before you made your little intervention there, to say that all of that is fine, unless you have the amendment it really doesn't make very much sense, because what we're doing is we're effectively opening the door to a lot more problems, because children can make their ways into swimming pools and swimming pools environments and fall into the swimming pool.